How do you know who she really is? Not the version she shows on dates, not the image she paints on social media, the real her. Women rarely tell you directly about their past, but they leak it out in fragments, in the way they talk, the words they choose. And once you catch these fragments, the whole picture changes. Suddenly, you understand why she behaves the way she does. And suddenly, you know if she's the kind of woman you should invest in or walk away from. In this video, I'll break down 7 phrases women say that reveal they've slept with a lot of men. Miss them, and you'll stay blind. Spot them, and you'll never be played again. Let's start with the very first phrase. On the surface, it sounds harmless, but when you dig deeper, it reveals far more than you think. Number 1. I just get along better with guys. If you hear this on date 2 and your shoulders relax, stop. That sentence isn't a charming quirk, it's a strategy. Some women genuinely grew up around brothers, sports, or male-heavy workplaces and feel at ease in that dynamic. But often, this line signals something else. She's used to high levels of male attention and knows how to orbit it. In male-dominant spaces, she tends to be the center, familiar with the rhythm of compliments, favors, and soft exceptions that follow. That doesn't make her wrong. It just means you need clarity before your emotions write checks your boundaries can't cash. Here's the psychology: value through the male gaze. If most of her affirmation has historically come from men, she's learned how to thrive there by staying likable, non-confrontational, and always a little special. The side effect? Blurry lines. He's just a friend can quietly morph into late-night one-on-ones, private jokes, and a pattern where you're expected to be understanding while she enjoys endless access. Your move isn't to police her friendships. It's to test the frame. Use the 3-line audit. First, attention management. Observe how she handles male attention in real time. Does she naturally shut down flirty banter, or does she play along and explain it away as harmless? Second, continuity versus rotation. Are these long-standing, clearly platonic friendships with stable boundaries, or a rotating bench of new work brothers who appear and disappear when the vibe shifts? Third, female relationships. Women who truly get along with guys also tend to have at least a couple of healthy bonds with women. If she dismisses all women as drama, that's not compatibility, that's a pattern. Now the solution. Set respectful, measurable boundaries early, without drama. Try this line. I respect your friendships with men. I also protect my peace. For me, recurring late-night one-on-ones, private trips, or chats that used to cross the line with past admirers aren't part of a relationship I can show up fully in. Then watch behavior, not words. Concrete behaviors to track over the next 30 days. Does she volunteer information about plans with male friends, or do you have to extract it? When a guy friend pushes closeness, does she create daylight, group settings, clear time limits, and 0 private messaging at night? Does she introduce you into that circle or keep worlds separate? If she aligns, you've got a woman who values you more than the audience. If she rolls her eyes, accuses you of being controlling, and keeps the spotlight intact, that's data, not drama. You don't fix patterns, you recognize them. So what happens when the same woman tells you she doesn't do labels? That's when your boundaries meet her freedom, and someone pays the bill. Number 2. I don't do labels. The moment she drops this line, your ears should perk up. At first, it sounds enlightened, like she's too evolved for the messy politics of modern dating. She'll say she just wants to go with the flow or see where things go. But let me translate. What she often means is, I enjoy freedom without accountability. Let me give you a real story. David, a 52-year-old engineer, thought he struck gold with a woman who seemed spontaneous and independent. On their second date, she smiled and said, I don't do labels. He didn't question it. He liked the freedom too. For a few months, everything felt light, fun, and exciting. But when David started to feel more invested, he noticed something. She was texting other men late at night. She kept disappearing on weekends. And when he finally asked, "Where do you see us going?" she dodged the question with the same old line, "I don't do labels." In reality, she wasn't protecting freedom. She was protecting her ability to juggle multiple options without being held to any standard. Here's the psychology. People who resist labels often resist the responsibility those labels bring. A relationship label isn't just a title, it's expectations, consistency, transparency, a sense of being answerable to each other. By avoiding labels, she's avoiding the possibility of being called out when her actions don't match her words. It's a preemptive shield against accountability. So what's the solution? You don't argue about the label. You test the behavior. A woman who truly values freedom will still act with integrity. She'll communicate openly, she'll keep you in the loop, and you'll feel prioritized even without a tag. But a woman who hides behind no labels will keep you guessing, constantly placing you in the gray zone where she holds all the power and you carry all the uncertainty. Here's a practical move you can use. Instead of asking for the label, state your standard. Say something like, "I don't need a label tomorrow, but I do need clarity. If we're spending time together consistently, I expect honesty about whether you're also seeing other people. That's what respect looks like to me." Notice you're not begging for commitment. You're drawing a line that says, if you want access to my time and energy, there are terms. And watch her response carefully. Does she respect that? Or does she dodge again, maybe accuse you of being too serious? If she does, that's not her protecting her freedom. It's her protecting her loophole. Concrete behaviors to test. Does she introduce you to friends or family, or keep you tucked away? Does she consistently follow through on plans or disappear with vague excuses? Does she ever initiate clarity talks herself, or only dodge yours? The bottom line, I don't do labels, isn't always a death sentence, but it is always a test. If she pairs it with honesty and transparency, you might have a woman who values independence but still respects you. If she pairs it with secrecy and avoidance, you're setting yourself up for betrayal by omission. And here's the irony. The people who shout no labels the loudest are usually the ones with the most complicated histories. They avoid definition because they know definition comes with exposure. But what about the women who don't hide at all, who admit they've had a lot of experiences and try to spin it as wisdom? That's the next phrase you need to decode. Number 3, I've had a lot of experiences, but I don't regret any of them. This one sounds empowering on the surface. She's framing her past as growth, a collection of lessons rather than mistakes. And let's be clear, there's nothing wrong with owning your story. Confidence in one's past can be a strength. But when she emphasizes a lot of experiences with a quick add-on of no regrets, that's not just transparency. It's a carefully designed shield. She's getting ahead of your judgment by spinning the narrative before you even process it. Here's the psychology at play. This phrase works like a preemptive defense mechanism. By admitting to a lot of experiences but adding no regrets, she's making it hard for you to ask follow-up questions without sounding judgmental or insecure. It's a strategy. Acknowledge enough to appear honest, then frame it as growth so you can't push further. In other words, she's telling you, yes, there's a history, but don't challenge me on it because I've already turned it into wisdom. Now here's the problem. If someone consistently rebrands every past relationship, every short-term involvement, every crossed line as a learning experience, they never really own the consequences. Without regret, there's no reflection. Without reflection, the same patterns tend to repeat. The danger isn't her past. It's whether that past is still quietly shaping her present. So what's the move for you? Don't take the bait and start interrogating her history. Instead, anchor the conversation in the present. You could say, we've all had experiences. What matters to me is whether those experiences changed how you show up in relationships now. So how do you handle trust? How do you handle commitment? The point isn't to dig up numbers or details. It's to see if she can connect her past to actual growth. Concrete signs of real growth versus scripted reframing. Real growth. She can identify what she does differently now compared to 5 years ago. Scripted reframing. She keeps repeating no regrets without examples of changed behavior. Real growth. She can talk about what she values in long-term connection. Scripted reframing. She laughs everything off as fun stories without depth. Your job isn't to punish someone for having a past. Your job is to identify whether her past taught her discernment, or if she's still in the same cycle, dressed up as empowerment. Here's the truth most men miss. A woman who says she has no regrets might not be lying. She might genuinely feel that way. But if you see zero evidence of evolution, if the lessons never translate into boundaries, standards, or accountability, then what she's really saying is, I've done it before, and I'll do it again. So don't just listen to the words, watch the pattern. No regrets means nothing if the same choices keep showing up in different packaging. And next, pay attention to the phrase that sounds like raw confidence but often signals something deeper when she insists she's really comfortable with her body. Number 4, I'm just really comfortable with my body. Now, on the surface, this one sounds like confidence. And confidence is attractive. There's no denying that. A woman who owns her presence, who doesn't flinch under the weight of attention, is magnetic. But when she goes out of her way to declare it, unprompted, repeatedly, you have to ask yourself, what's behind that statement? Because sometimes it's not just about self-acceptance. It's about signaling familiarity with desire, with attention, with being the focal point of male interest. Let me bring in a story. Mark, a 47-year-old who runs a small auto shop, once dated a woman who loved repeating that line. Every couple of conversations, she'd drop it in. I'm just really comfortable with my body. At first, Mark thought it was refreshing. After all, who doesn't want to be with someone confident? But over time, he noticed a pattern. She dressed in ways that always pushed the boundary between classy and provocative, not a problem on its own, but she also seemed to need constant affirmation. She would post pictures online late at night, linger in conversations with male customers a little too long, and always circle back to reminding Mark how comfortable she was in her skin. Eventually, he realized it wasn't just confidence. It was a language she'd learned from years of being in the spotlight of attraction, a skill at drawing and managing attention. Here's the psychology. When someone emphasizes body confidence too much, it often signals more than self-esteem. It signals repetition, familiarity. Being desired isn't new, it's expected. And when something is expected, it can easily become currency in how they navigate relationships. That's why you have to listen for frequency. True confidence doesn't need to be broadcast. It shows up naturally in posture, in tone, in how she carries herself. Manufactured confidence needs to be announced. So what's the solution for you as a man? It's not to shame her confidence or demand she tone it down. It's to draw a clear line between attraction and attention. Attraction is personal, between you and her. Attention is public, and if she constantly seeks it, you need to know whether you're in competition with her audience. Here's a practical step. Watch how she handles validation. When she gets compliments from others, does she acknowledge them politely and move on, or does she extend the moment, keep the door open, and circle back later? Another step. Observe whether her self-image requires a constant stream of likes and comments, or whether she can go quiet for a while without getting restless. These aren't small details. They're windows into whether comfortable in my body means secure in herself or dependent on being desired. Concrete signs to track. She emphasizes confidence without over-explaining it. Green flag. She constantly references her body or appearance in conversation. Yellow flag. She uses confidence as a reason to justify boundary-pushing behavior. Red flag. The truth is, there's nothing wrong with a woman being proud of herself. But there's a world of difference between pride and performance. If her comfort with her body comes across as a need to showcase it for external validation, you're not just dating her, you're dating her audience too. So pay attention, because when she follows up by saying she has a lot of guy friends, but it's never weird, you're about to walk into even murkier territory. Number 5. I have a lot of guy friends, but it's never weird. At first, this sounds harmless, even progressive. Who doesn't want a partner who's social, easygoing, and able to maintain friendships across genders? But when a woman makes a point of saying this, it usually signals more than a friendly personality. It hints at a dynamic she's had to manage repeatedly, and often, never weird, really means, I've learned to handle the fallout when lines get crossed. Here's the psychology. Friendships between men and women can absolutely be genuine. But when someone has a lot of guy friends, the odds are high that at least one of those friendships has tested boundaries at some point. Maybe it was curiosity. Maybe it was a late-night message. Maybe it was a blurred moment that didn't fully cross over. But never weird is often code for, I've been here before, I know how to smooth it over. The key issue isn't whether she has male friends. The key issue is how she manages those relationships when attention shifts. Does she draw hard lines that protect her partner, or does she downplay situations to keep access to every connection? It's never weird. Sounds like clarity, but in practice it often means she's gotten good at normalizing situations that most men would see as red flags. So what's your move? Don't demand she cut off her male friends. That's insecurity, and it backfires. Instead, focus on boundary clarity. Ask yourself, are these friendships transparent? Does she introduce you, include you, and let you see the dynamic? Or are they compartmentalized? Hidden messages, unexplained absences, private inside jokes you're not part of? Practical test. Pay attention to her behavior when you meet her guy friends. Does she position you clearly as her partner, or does she keep the dynamic ambiguous? Real confidence integrates you into her world. Avoidance keeps you on the outside. Another concrete move. Listen for how she describes past situations. If she shrugs off stories where male friends tried to cross the line and frames them as no big deal, that tells you she's comfortable carrying tension without addressing it directly. That's a skill, but it's not one you want weaponized against your peace of mind. Here's the truth. A healthy woman with guy friends doesn't need to convince you it's never weird. She just shows you through transparency and consistency. If she has to emphasize it with words, there's usually a reason. And that's why you need to brace yourself for the next phrase. Because when she proudly says she's really open-minded, you might think you found a free spirit. But more often than not, it's a chameleon phrase with hidden layers you can't ignore. Number 6. I'm just really open-minded. Now this one is tricky because it can mean 1,000 different things depending on the context. Sometimes it's genuine. She enjoys travel. She likes trying new cuisines. She's adventurous in spirit. But when it comes to relationships, I'm open-minded often carries an unspoken message. I've lived an adventurous past, and I expect you to accept it without question. Let me illustrate with a story. John, a 55-year-old who had gone through a divorce, met a woman who described herself as very open-minded. At first, he found it exciting. She seemed spontaneous, fun, and fearless about new experiences. But as the months went by, he realized that phrase was doing more work than he thought. Open-minded became her shield for anything she wanted to justify. If she stayed in touch with an old flame, I'm open-minded. If she went out with a group of men from her past, I'm open-minded. When John finally brought up his concerns, she flipped it on him. You're too traditional. I need someone who's more open-minded. That's when it clicked. She wasn't just describing a personality trait. She was setting a rule. Either you accept everything on her terms, or you're the problem. Here's the psychology. In relationships, open-minded can sometimes be code for, I don't want to be judged for my choices. It creates a power imbalance where you're pressured to silence your discomfort because questioning her behavior makes you seem narrow or controlling. In reality, Being open-minded should mean the ability to consider new perspectives, not the right to bypass accountability. So what's your solution? Don't let the phrase stand alone. Test its definition. Next time you hear it, ask directly. Open-minded in what way? A woman who truly values growth will talk about curiosity, new ideas, or adaptability. A woman using it as cover will default to vague or defensive answers. Concrete behaviors to watch. She uses open-minded to invite shared growth, reading together, exploring new hobbies, or expanding each other's worldview. Or she uses open-minded as a get-out-of-jail-free card when confronted about past or present blurred boundaries. She accepts your standards as valid even if they differ, or she dismisses them as old-fashioned or closed-minded. Practical move, mirror her language back to her. Say, I'm open-minded too, but for me that means respecting boundaries and communicating honestly. Does that match your version? This reframes the conversation and forces her to reveal whether open-minded is about expansion or simply about avoiding limits. The deeper truth here is this. A woman who has built a habit of using open-minded as armor is telling you she doesn't want to be pinned down by rules. And that sounds exciting, until you realize rules are exactly what protect your peace. So, stay sharp. Because the next phrase is the crown jewel, the most revealing of all. When she says, I don't get attached easily, she's not bragging about strength. She's confessing a survival strategy. Number 7. I don't get attached easily. At first, this sounds like strength, independence, the kind of cool detachment that makes her look untouchable in a world full of people who get swept away too fast. But in reality, when a woman says this, it's rarely about being naturally independent. It's about conditioning. It's about training herself to keep emotions on a leash after too many situations where feelings complicated everything. Here's the psychology. This phrase is almost always a defense mechanism. Somewhere along the way, she learned that attachment led to disappointment, so now she compartmentalizes. She knows how to engage in closeness without letting it touch her core. That doesn't mean she's incapable of deep connection. It means she's built walls high enough to keep anyone from seeing where her vulnerabilities actually live. And here's the problem for you. If you believe this is a challenge, if you think, I'll be the one to break through, I'll be the man who changes her, you're setting yourself up for emotional exhaustion. You'll overinvest, overgive, and keep proving yourself, only to discover that she's trained to keep you in the outer circle. So what's your move? Stop trying to melt defenses with more effort. Test for willingness, not potential. You can do this with one simple question. If we're building something together, are you willing to let your guard down over time? If she answers honestly, yes, but it takes me a while, then you have a path forward. But if she doubles down, that's just who I am, I don't get attached. Take that as truth. She's telling you her ceiling before you even start climbing. Concrete behaviors to watch. When conflicts arise, does she lean in and work through them, or pull away and go cold? When you show affection, does she reciprocate or brush it off with humor? Over months, do you see her opening up gradually, or does she keep intimacy at arm's length no matter what you give? The truth is, a healthy relationship requires some degree of attachment. Not dependency, not desperation, but trust, vulnerability, and the courage to let someone matter. If she's proud of not getting attached, she's telling you she's chosen control over connection. And you can't fix that by loving harder. So don't fall into the trap of thinking you'll be the exception. A woman who doesn't attach easily is often telling you, don't expect too much. Believe her the first time. And after hearing all 7 of these phrases, the bigger question becomes clear. What do you, as a man, need to do to protect your dignity and emotional balance when these words appear in real time? That's where we wrap it all together. Now that you've heard all 7 phrases, you probably realize something important. These aren't just random sentences, they're patterns, they're signals. And if you're not paying attention, they'll slip past you in casual conversation while they quietly set the tone for the entire relationship. Here's the truth. None of these phrases automatically make a woman bad or unworthy, but each one is a window into mindset, history, and strategy. A woman who says she just gets along better with guys may genuinely feel comfortable in that dynamic, or she may be addicted to the validation that comes with it. A woman who insists she doesn't do labels may value freedom, or she may simply want to avoid accountability. And the same logic applies to every phrase we've unpacked. Your job as a man isn't to judge instantly. Your job is to recognize patterns and test them. Words are cheap. Behaviors tell the real story. So instead of getting defensive or desperate when you hear these phrases, step back and observe. Does she align with your standards through consistent action, or does she just talk a good game? Because here's what matters most. You are not powerless. Too many men hear these lines and either shrink, afraid to rock the boat, or overcompensate, thinking they can fix the situation with more love, more patience, more proving. That never works. You don't change people by pouring more into them than they pour into you. You change your life by setting standards and refusing to lower them when someone tests you. Concrete takeaway: the next time you hear one of these phrases, don't argue, don't panic, and don't beg. Instead, treat it like a signal flare. Say to yourself, this is data. Then watch what she does. If her actions confirm the hidden meaning, you have your answer. If her actions rise above it, maybe you've found someone different. Either way, you win, because clarity is always a win. At the end of the day, you deserve more than half-truths, blurred lines, or emotional games. You deserve mutual respect, consistency, and a relationship that adds peace, not chaos. Don't negotiate away your dignity for someone else's comfort. Protect your energy, protect your time, and above all, protect your standards. If this video opened your eyes, don't just keep it to yourself. Subscribe to the channel, hit like, and share it with another man who needs to hear it. Drop a comment with which phrase you've heard before and how you handled it. I want to hear your story, because the more we share, the stronger we get together. You've got one life. Don't waste it trying to decode mixed signals. Choose clarity, choose respect, and watch how fast your world changes.